Good afternoon, StreamerSquare. Hope you're having yourselves a wonderful Wednesday, and maybe those of you who stuck around from Hotfix, welcome to a slightly different show for today, along with something we've been doing every Wednesday, actually, here for the past couple of weeks. My name is Shado Temple. Welcome to StreamerSquare's weekly workshop series. The idea of these weekly workshops is that we work together to try to improve what you do. Whether that be, your live streaming or making your recordings or just whatever sort of multimedia thing you're doing on the internet, we want to make sure that we create stuff that helps you move that stuff forward and move that stuff along. In the past couple of weeks, we've explored a lot of different kind of mechanics of streaming and recording and using YouTube and stuff like that. The past couple ones that I have been doing have been with regards to Twitch. And today is going to be a little bit different, actually, both in terms of format and in terms of sort of the subject. Typically, a lot of this stuff has been kind of mechanical about it, but today is going to be a lot about improving just the overall quality of your presentation. I'm talking, of course, about your voice. It doesn't necessarily, you don't think necessarily when you're trying to set up your OBS and setting up your overlays and making sure that you have all the emotes correct and like all the artwork and making sure you put the correct title and thumbnail and game choice and all that. And those are all fantastic things. But when it comes down to it, that opportunity for you to engage with your audience starts here, starts with your voice, starts with how you are communicating to your audience. And our hope is to try to help you get better at that today. Instead of me just chatting the whole time about this, which, I have talked for a couple of years here, so I know how to at least speak. But I figured it would be really important to bring in somebody who knows their stuff a lot better than I do. So joining us for the show today is professional voice coach Pam Johnson, actually my own personal voice coach, who is going to be joining us today. Pam, how are you doing today?
I am doing well. It is so good to be with you.
Yeah, and you as well. So again, Pam is a professional for-hire voice coach. The idea is that she can help you improve your voice. That simply put, we'll explain a lot more what that means here in just a few minutes, as well as Pam's background. And we're going to be leading some exercises today as well to kind of get you into the mode of helping your breath support and things of that nature. Big thing about today, as opposed to usually kind of my workshops in particular are a little bit more wordy. There are a lot of slides, lots of different subjects we talk about. This one in particular is going to be very focused on your questions. So if you have any questions, be sure to let us know in chat, and I'll be feeding them to Pam as we go along, so we can talk about the things that you want to talk about when it comes to learning how to be better with your voice. So a little bit of background, by the way, actually, tell you what, why don't we talk about you first? Because it's not as exciting to hear about me yet. But what do you do, Pam? What's your background and where have you been?
Well, my background is that I have a Bachelor of Music in Vocal Performance. So I have done all kinds of training, and it's classical training as a singer. So I started when I was 16 at the conservatory here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And then I went to UW-Eau Claire and got a 4-year degree and did a semester of work at Arizona State toward a master's, and then just thought, yeah, no. So being classically trained, someone even said, "Oh, are you going to teach people how to use a microphone today?" And I said, no, because I don't do very well with microphones. Classical singers are taught to be on stage. We're, taught to be opera singers.
Right.
So we have to stand on a stage and send our voices to the back of an auditorium. So I tend not to be very good with microphones because I always kind of hold back a little bit, because otherwise I think I'm just going to blow them out. So then I have also done voiceovers for commercials, for TV, for radio, for industrial videos, like training videos and things. And a friend of mine just had me do a voiceover reading all the names of graduates for a college graduation.
Sure.
And
A few hundred names, I'm sure.
it wasn't that many.
Okay.
And the one problem is that most of them were Spanish.
Oh,
And
okay.
I don't speak Spanish. So I had to get
Gonna give you like a pronunciation guide or something at
yeah.
least?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So it was for a place out in California. So
Sure.
all of the Hispanic names. So that was interesting. And then a couple of Russian names too.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, so I'm still doing it. And I put down that I've been doing voice talent work for 30 years, so on and off.
Which I think is how a lot of people do, unless they're like nose to the grindstone kind of voiceover work. Like that's kind of how it happens, right? Whatever else you're doing kind of lets up, then you kind of jump back in, and then maybe you pick up a more regular gig, and then you kind of sit off of it for a little bit before you jump back into the industry.
Yeah. So I didn't want to mislead anyone.
Certainly, no, that's but still, you over those years you have accrued quite possibly most definitely more experience than any of us probably have, either literally on this call or in the chat right there. So thank you for coming along with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and so one thing I did want to mention before we continue on this, excuse me, is that you mentioned that you're not always very comfortable talking more about microphone kind of etiquette, and we can discuss that a little bit later for those of you who aren't necessarily very comfortable in front of a microphone yourself. But the fact that you're using just your like laptop's built-in microphone right now, correct?
Yes.
Yes, but because of how you allow your voice to carry, as with your kind of traditional background in voice work and in singing, you sound great, right? Like I can personally attest to, including my own sound back in when I started doing this. Even though I'm in front of a really nice microphone or something like that, not having that much better of sound than what you have right now, which is an incredible thing to hear.
Yeah, and of course, having done voiceovers, I am used to looking at a microphone like you have, with the big spit screen in front of it that's, right in front of me. And
yeah, I literally had to take this off because I was doing a recording just before this, and
right.
not the most visually appealing thing for a workshop, but really helps those plosives stay out. So that's nice.
Right. Yeah, so I've certainly worked with those mics and had a professional sound engineer on the other side of the window,
right,
fixing things. So with not doing a great number of voiceovers lately, I'm not going to spend the money on an expensive microphone. And I found that this worked well enough, and I don't know, it just works. So,
yeah.
But because I'm used to sending my voice farther, then I think it works.
It really does, and we definitely need to talk about like proper projection and things like that as we move along today. This is actually an excellent point, because I really want to kind of make sure that we understand how this workshop is going to work, folks. This workshop is not about how to engage your voice meter banana and make sure that it's ready to go, or to ensure that your audio interface is connected to your preamp with the proper settings and like have your XML mic connected to it's not that. All right. There are plenty of technical guides online. We probably will do a workshop on audio quality on another day. Today is explicitly focused on improving this part of the audio system. All right. That isn't to say this part or even the, what you're hearing. This is very specifically about improving your own sound. Okay. So as your questions are coming in, please be sure to ask questions. We will answer them as we go along, as well as, again, lead ourselves into some exercises here too. So, and a little bit of background for myself, if this is your first time joining us for StreamerSquare in the workshops, in which case, welcome. My name is Shado Temple. I have been streaming here on Twitch for about 6 years now, coming up on 7. I was partnered back in 2018, so I've just been. I just had my 2.5 year anniversary. If I don't think anybody celebrates half-year anniversaries on Twitch. That's kind of weird. But regardless, have been on Twitch for a bit, so I kind of know how these things sort of work. I've been doing voice acting both on Twitch and off of Twitch professionally. I'm a host for on-camera stuff, including, of course, StreamerSquare, along with doing some voice work more recently for YouTube, like Minecraft channels and things like that. And when I'm not doing all of this from my tiny little studio space in a walk-in closet, I am teaching at a museum. So my entire day is talking. That is what I do starting from 8 a.m. till about 1 a.m. every day is just nonstop talking. And before I started working with Pam, who's my, I specifically found Pam through, I think it was a talent agency that we were working mutually through. My voice was dead by the end of the day. Like, and why not, right? You talk for 8 to 10 hours a day. Surprise, your voice starts to hurt by the end. But as it turns out, it doesn't have to. If you do things right and you actually maintain things correctly, you don't have to be in pain by the end of your day. And that's something we're going to talk about a lot today, too, is that this sort of thing, the sort of pain you might feel after a 4 or 5, 6 hour stream, the kind of lack of energy you have by the end of it, it may be due to some pretty bad practices that you are practicing that if you try to work on and try to improve upon, you can actually feel a whole lot better and sound a whole lot better both during and after your broadcast as well. So yeah. With that, let's talk about Pam. So you've been in this the voice coaching business for about 4 years now. Can you explain to us what what does a voice coach do for somebody?
So what I do, I come at it from two different sides. So first of all, from the classically trained singer side, it's what is the instrument of your voice? So you think about it, it is a wind instrument. You take breath in, the breath goes out through your throat, past your vocal cords, out of your mouth. So I teach how does it work? The physics of sound and the physical thing of how it all works in your head and in your throat and all of those types of things. And then the other side of it is, as a voice actor, I also know that if you pitch your voice a certain way, you will get a specific response. So there's a sale. Then people are looking for the sale. There's a puppy. Where's the puppy? I'm looking for the puppy. So,
there's that energy, that excitement.
Yeah, it's the excitement, but it's also where you're pitching it in your head, using the resonator that is your skull. Then there's also what I call the mommy voice that's pitched right about here, and that's pharmaceutical commercial. You're fine. Don't worry about these weird side effects. It may kill you, but you'll be okay.
I heard kill in there, but I feel somewhat reassured still. I don't know why.
I don't feel it should be okay.
Yeah.
And then you have
okay.
Then you have the information range of your voice that's centered right at your mouth. And then men are able to access it better. You can also have your chest range. And that's power. Women have a little bit of a more difficult time getting down there because you have to get it past your throat down into your chest. You can do it once in a while, but you can hurt yourself if you do too much of that. Think about the weird woman, Elizabeth. She was the one with the blood testing thing.
I'm trying to think of I've lost it completely. I had it for a second, and it's completely gone.
Yeah, I should have written it down, but she sounds
okay.
bizarre because she tried to get her voice so low.
Sure.
And what I'm seeing now or hearing now, there are a lot of people whose voices are kind of stuck in their throat, and that's the one thing that I kept after you about. It's got to be up in your head.
Yep.
Because if it's down in your throat, if it's staying down there, you can't move it around. It's physically impossible. and so then it's sitting on your vocal cords, and you're gonna blow out your voice. It's really.
But I think that plays out a lot, especially as people are, because for example, for me right now, this microphone's right in front of my face, right? Like I am talking approximately about 2 to 3 inches away from this microphone. Do I have to do that? Probably not, but I at least have kind of tested and enjoy how it sounds. But I find a lot of people who come into this, they set up a microphone for them doing streams and things like that. And that's what they presume their voice needs to be, which is right here. They need to reach this far with their voice, which means they tuck it inside and they talk like this as they're going with that. And so you're mentioning the fact that you can't really hold this down in your throat. It has to be able to expand outward past that, right?
Right. Well, and then I explain it too that, so imagine a guitar, an acoustic guitar has, it's this big empty space behind the strings.
Right.
And that's what allows the sound to happen. You have an electric guitar and there isn't that space behind the strings, then you have to have an external amplifier. So with your voice, your head, your skull, and the sinuses that are around here and the inside of your mouth, those are the resonators like on an acoustic guitar. So if it's only down here, you would need an external amp. Well, you don't have an external amp for your voice. So you have to learn how to use your head. So when I work with my clients, I'll have you make different sounds so that you get used to feeling the vibrations in your head. So then you know that your voice is where it should be. So right. when I'm doing this, or hi, excited, I'm actually feeling the vibrations right about by my eyebrows. So you get used to, so you learn and become aware of what does it feel like when my voice is where it should be, when I'm using the resonator that is my skull. And it's going to feel different, the different pitches that you make. You're going to feel the vibrations in the different parts of your face.
Yeah, and actually, speaking as a student of this and trying to discover this for myself the first time, yes, it is weird to try to think of how your kind of face vibrates and resonates as you're doing this, but it's amazing how you can kind of settle that in and then just understand where that needs to be as you're going along. That helped me a lot, kind of getting started there. It took a little bit, and you're going to feel a little silly just sitting there and going like, oh my goodness, there's a sale. Oh my God, I'm so excited. But if you can really start to like just kind of get a feel for your face as that's happening, it does help. It does help a lot.
Yeah, just the awareness. And the folks that I work with really just talk about the awareness as because who even thinks about that? Oh, as I'm speaking, different parts of my bones in my head are vibrating. Nobody thinks about that until somebody like me brings it up, and they go, oh yeah, that is weird. And then once you're aware of it, then you can do all kinds of stuff. And you can change it up.
And also, I feel like a lot of people don't really necessarily think about the mechanics of speaking, but speaking is weird, man. Like when you really truly think about it, the sort of things that your body is doing to make these correct sounds that you're looking for, you put it on autopilot these days, of course, because that's just how you went for it. But you never really, unless of course you sought help from a speech therapist or someone like that, you never really practiced working on those things. It slowly kind of built up to where it is today. And so the important thing about this is remembering that whatever you have right now in terms of your voice doesn't have to be how you speak. It's just how you speak right now. And that's something that I had to learn myself as well, is that you're not stuck with the voice that you have at the moment. It is yours, certainly, and that's great. But you with practice, you can kind of improve it to a more comfortable, a more reasonable, and a more kind of communicative space that will allow you to kind of really approach these things a little bit better. And making sure that you kind of keep track of being more aware of how your voice resonates with the rest of your body can really be a good first step towards that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you're going to be doing a podcast or a Twitch stream, your voice is the main thing. So if your voice doesn't sound good, people are going to turn you off. I've had people tell me that they've listened to an audiobook and they were really interested in the book, but they had to stop it because they couldn't stand the sound of the voice.
Which is absurd, because that's the only content you're getting right there, right?
Right. It's all about the voice. So I'm always interested when you look up, I want to be a podcaster. So you go to these sites that say, how can I be a podcaster? And they'll give you all of the equipment to do. They'll give you all of the, like, here are the top 10 things. And it's the microphone, it's the room, it's the platforms. And I've looked at several of those sites, and they usually have about 10 things. This is what you need to do to be a podcaster. Not one of them talks about the sound of the voice. I'm thinking, it's all about the voice. You're kind of.
I think we lost her for just a second. She's back. Sorry, Pam, we just lost you for about the past 20 seconds or so there. Could you repeat that real quick?
So when these sites talk about being a podcaster and they never mention the sound of your voice, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
The podcast is all about someone listening to your voice.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's kind of nuts. But I think that, how many people are trained singers? So,
not a ton, I assume. I guess I don't know how big conservancies are, but probably not too many, right?
Right. So just because, you can't feel badly that you don't know what I know about the voice. Of course not. I took all those lessons, 6 years of lessons. So I know all of this stuff.
Yeah, this shouldn't be a matter of badgering people, by the way. Like, this is not like, how dare you speak wrong? This is more about making sure that you take wherever you are now, whether it be in a great state or just okay, and going up from there.
Right.
Certainly.
Right. So there are, two main things that happen. I really want people to get their voice up out of their throat into their head, because number one, they're going to feel a lot better. So, and that's what I was really working with you on. I could hear you at the end of the day and your voice was tired.
It was ragged. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I want you to be safe. I want you to be comfortable. I want your voice, your fabulous voice, to go for years and years and years.
Here's to hoping, at least.
Yeah. Then I also want it up in the head so that it can be expressive. Because it is physically impossible to be expressive when it's down here. You just can't do it. And it's more fun. It's more fun to listen to when it's very expressive, and there are the highs and the lows and the, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and for a lot of this, I'm trying to stay in kind of that quote unquote information sort of space that you were discussing. So a lot of my reverberations happening right about here at the moment. But when I am super excited and I go up here, then I can feel it right here. And that took practice. That genuinely did. I know it doesn't necessarily always sound like it, but when I first started streaming, I was talking like this the entire time. And I was like, hey guys, welcome to my stream. Hope you're having a great day. I went to the park today and it was fun. Work was kind of tough. How are you doing? And that, speaking like that, maybe it feels comfortable in that moment, but it does burn your throat out over time much faster surprisingly, than this does right here. This is allowing your entire face to work for you. Talking down here, your throat's the only thing that's dealing with this, and it's not going to end well. I promise you, because I tried to do it and it didn't go well.
Right. Right.
And I think so. One thing I wanted to mention too, just kind of from the streamer perspective on this, you mentioned a lot of like kind of podcast stuff. Yes, there's literally a. First off, by the way, welcome viewers. This is StreamerSquare Voice Coach Workshop. The idea is, yes, there will be absolutely a Q&A session. You absolutely should be asking questions in chat, and we'll be answering them coming up here in just a little bit. I saw that Cunning Dolphin. I got it. We're definitely going to do that pretty soon here. But I was going to say, with the podcast, it's an exclusively audio experience. I think some people with streaming get kind of thinking that because it's such a the first thing you see when you go to twitch.tv/ and then you type in a channel name is you see that visual. And I think a lot of people just assume that as long as they nail that, they'll be okay. But here's a point. Those of us who watch TV, for example, or maybe you put on your favorite Netflix binge choice that you have right now. Show of hands in chat, and for Pam as well. How often do you pay attention to the visual? Are you watching eyes fixed, eyes glued to the screen the entire time? Are you always keeping track of what's happening on that screen? Or are you tuning out from time to time, only looking up to see what's happening on screen, but mostly listening, mostly keeping track of that audio instead of just the visual? At which point, then the visual is important, and that can be a good attractor, especially for things like thumbnails and things like that. But if you are being honest with yourself, you're listening more often than you're ever actually watching. And that's why this audio quality is so important. And streaming to that end is a vocal performance. We talked a lot about Pam's background of literally being a singer, doing these vocal performances. Streaming is a vocal performance. You can't think of it as this, I'm playing a game in session, I talk sometimes. It is about that audio, and you really have to kind of focus on those things. It's the first impression when you step in somewhere, other than, of course, the visual. They're going to be listening to you first, and if they don't like your sound, they're not going to stick around, right? And that's a really important piece here. And the last thing I'm going to mention, and I'll shut up and let Pam actually speak since she has the expertise here. The nicest part about this, unless, of course, you hire a vocal coach, in which case, by the way, I do recommend if you're trying to make that next step, and we'll talk about that more later. But improving your own voice and practicing with this instrument that you have is free to do. Buying a more expensive microphone, a better preamp, a better interface, and having all these little extra doodads and bits and pieces, those cost money. Practicing to improve your voice is free for you to do. And if it is, I highly suggest it to anybody that really is serious about streaming. Focus on improving your own vocal performance before you start going off and buying a billion things for your channel. So yeah. With that, yeah, so we talked a little bit about kind of the sort of things that you work with when it comes to your clients. One thing that I think I was a bit bad about at first too, by the way. This sounds really basic and weird, but how should people breathe?
Yeah, I'm going to stand up for this.
Okay, all right.
So if you figure out that your voice, let's see, yeah.
Yep, we got you.
Your voice goes from here to here. This is the instrument. This is the wind instrument.
Right.
So, and you'll hear people say, speak from the diaphragm because that sounds like you have a bigger voice. Mm-hmm. Well, your diaphragm is attached under your rib cage here. So it splits you, like a loaf of bread.
Yeah.
So what happens when you breathe, when your lungs expand, I have to get sideways. So when your lungs expand, it pushes the diaphragm down. The diaphragm then pushes your digestive organs out of the way. So when you breathe, your stomach should go in and out.
But Pam, my lungs are up here. It should be just the chest the whole time, right?
Yeah, no. The lungs are here and they're filling up.
Right.
And then that's pushing down. So when you breathe, your chest should be absolutely still. Your shoulders should be absolutely still.
But instead of trying to expand your chest, you should be focusing on your core.
Right, right.
Got it.
And what happens, so there was a woman that I saw a video that she said what happens is children breathe that way and your stomach goes in and out until they go to the doctor. And the doctor puts the stethoscope right here and says, take a deep breath. So you're trying to accommodate and please the doctor. So you're trying to push your chest to the stethoscope. Well, that's not how you breathe. It's not how it works. So if this feels weird to you, that, oh, that's not how I breathe. If you do yoga, that's, they talk about the 3-part breath. That's the first part of that breath. What you'll find is if you're laying in bed at night and you're very relaxed and not thinking about it, that's the way you breathe. And you will find your stomach going in and out. The reason that that's important is, from a singer's standpoint, is you want to get the most breath you can in the shortest period of time. So then you have that, your lungs are all full so that you can sing a long phrase. You don't want to be stopping for breath every few notes because that's annoying. So for a speaking, it's not as with a speaking voice that you're gasping for breath. It's much more obvious when you're singing. But it still helps you, you're down into the core of your body. And it's just better for you. Plus, if your shoulders are nice and loose and back and stuff, you're not constricting things as you're breathing that way. Or if you're breathing too much up in here, you're going to hyperventilate after a while, and all of a sudden get lightheaded and fall off your chair.
Yeah. So if you ever feel like you're projecting a lot and then all of a sudden you just feel out of breath, your lungs more than typically can handle more breath support than you're necessarily giving them. You just have to be more cognizant about how you're breathing as you move forward with those things. The sort of sound that I'm looking for, I have to project, because this microphone does not have a lot of pickup to it. I have to project from here to the other room, which doesn't necessarily result in it making it sound like I'm very loud about things, but I have to have a lot of breath support to make that possible and make that sound human. And if I just breathe like by just inhaling from my chest, just like that, and I just filled up about halfway, I'm already running out of air by the time I'm done with this sentence. And then I have to go back and keep breathing like that. And if I had to keep pushing this along as I move along and go down, 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 I'd have to keep breathing like that the entire way. That's not how you string together a nice sound for your audience, to say the least.
Right. You want to have those nice long phrases.
Mm-hmm.
And then two, what you find is that if you get kind of hyped up, particularly you get nervous, it's really good to get back down into that deep breath. And you can even, to kind of center yourself, push your stomach out. And that'll pull in some air and it will center you. It'll kind of get the fluttery stuff taken care of. You just centers you. And you think about it, there are 4 layers of muscle in your abdomen. Mm-hmm. And you think about how much strength is there, how much power is there. It's pretty cool. So if your breathing is based down there, then you're coming into your strength, which is a nice way to think about it.
Yeah, and I think if you at home right now watching this are trying to do these things, it's like, oh, this doesn't sound like, this feels unnatural to me. This is something that I'm not used to, that I'd have to actually practice to do. It's okay. You've been settled in by society to breathe in this certain way. Just especially because for those of you unaware, I'm kind of a big guy. I tend to like having my gut sucked in instead of having, just pot belly the whole time, right? And so you kind of train yourself to kind of hold it together, as it were. When you're doing voice stuff, especially, when we're doing stuff like this, keep in mind that your stomach's not on camera, in which case you can let that go, you can just let that expand out there and make sure that you have that breath support so that, the important thing that's going on, this right here, is doing a whole lot better than necessarily maintaining your figure.
Yeah. Well, and people have asked me, well, Pam, do you breathe like that all the time? Yes, I do.
Mhm.
But 6 years of voice lessons, so yeah, and it's just what I do now. And it may feel weird. A client I'm working with right now said that she was having kind of a tough time with it, so she kept lying down.
Okay.
She would lie down and it would work, and then she would, okay, I got it, and then she would stand up and try and maintain it. So it's taken some time, but it's like any habit that you just develop new habits.
It takes
So
focus and it takes practice, but you can eventually become a habit that is very useful to you over time if you're willing to put the effort in.
right, exactly.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So, so far we kind of talked a lot about breathing and making sure that we have that down. Are there anything you kind of wanted to walk us through in terms of dealing with kind of again that sort of idea of actually no something I'd really love to hear about is again projecting. I think a lot of people have trouble projecting and understanding how that plays out when it comes to people understanding how you speak.
So if you're thinking about, so the breath is coming up through the windpipe, out past, and the vocal folds are like this, and they're sitting horizontally in here, and they're vibrating against each other.
Right. Should
As,
have like an
as the air,
anatomical picture today or something, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, as the air is coming through. So you think about, you've taken that deep breath, the air is coming out of your lungs, up through your trachea, past your vocal folds, out of your mouth. You want to kind of imagine here is this tube of air going out, and your voice is being carried on that air, and you want to send it. So you don't have to push it. You think more about sending it out there. So even if I'm across the room, I can still send my voice to this microphone without being loud.
Sure.
So you want to see? You want to hear?
I was gonna say, as to a point, you just did that a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel
All right.
free. So yeah,
So, all right. Get to see a little bit more of my house. Oh, and
beautiful ring light going on
yeah,
too.
and my daughter bought me this ring light. I was so thrilled with her. All right, so
Handy.
I am going to go to away.
All right.
All right, so I'm in the other.
Bye, Pam.
All right, so I'm on the other side of the room. I am about 15 feet away from that microphone.
At least, yeah.
Do you still hear me?
I hear you just fine. Yeah. And this keep in mind, folks, this is not like some like Blue Yeti that's picking up a bug across the room, right? Like this is just a built-in integrated webcam mic that is picking her up from 15 feet away. But you're not yelling. I don't understand, Pam.
No, I'm not yelling. I'm not yelling at all. So I'm kind of pushing my stomach in to push the air out, and I'm thinking about, and I feel a little bit more vibration in my face. So
Sure.
I'm moving my voice. And the thing, a singer having to be in an auditorium, you're singing a song that may have quiet parts and loud parts. So I have to be able to send even quiet things to you. Did you hear that?
It's getting caught up by a little bit by the by kind of the just the ambient sounds in your space, but we can definitely still hear you. Yeah.
Right, right. So the thing about and what I have found, so you can only do that if your voice is up in your head, because you have that resonator, just like you have with a guitar. It's up here, so it can move. Um, so it just has to be up here.
Yeah. And as that was happening, we have few people in chat mentioning that they have a very soft voice, so projecting is a struggle, or they feel like they have to scream to project. But that's not necessarily the case if
Yeah.
you know how to resonate with your skull a little bit better than you're currently doing. Is that correct?
Right, right. So I wasn't yelling at you. I was just sending my voice. And it's, the physics of the sound waves that are going.
Right.
And they are going to go farther if you are using the bone in your head to amplify them. So, and it takes practice, and it takes knowing how to do it.
For sure. And
right.
practice and some coaching if you also are looking forward to, I'm sure, right?
Yeah. So if you want to do this, if you want to do something that depends on your voice, take the time and the effort to make your voice better.
Yeah.
Because that's your instrument for and change. Just the awareness. Shado, didn't you find that it's within that first hour, just understanding how things worked? Oh, that's how it works. And just understanding that makes all the difference.
Yeah, I think it really is a lot about understanding the mechanics of how your voice works, because you just don't hear about it, honestly. And again, especially with like you mentioned podcasting, but the same thing happens with streaming all the time, is that people focus a lot on the technical side, but they don't necessarily focus on the performance side.
Mm-hmm.
And while people who sing and who perform in that sort of way definitely practice those sort of things, it's not something that's part of the culture for anything that is increasingly a technological performance that anybody can do. It's cool that we have this ability for everybody to be a performer now, but not everybody is getting that performance background that they can bring to the table for it. And I think that's a big problem for that, for sure, as well. One thing I wanted to toss in with, especially when it comes to kind of mic etiquette, I guess is the right word that I want to go for here. One thing that I see a lot of people try to do, and I mentioned this a little bit before, is whenever you're talking into a microphone for whether it's broadcasting, recording, voiceover, singing, any of those things, one thing I want to make sure that people are not doing is you're not trying to project to the microphone. If you are trying to project into that space, you're going to try to project 4 inches away, 6 inches away, a foot away, and that's not going to result in the sound that you want. For me, and this is kind of something you have to judge for yourself, you have to pretend that the audience you're trying to aim for, and I'll sometimes look directly in between the 2 screens that I have currently set up in my setup here, is I typically aim for my voice to be at least heard about 5 feet away from me, which is where the wall is in this small room that I have. Or even beyond that, towards out the door and then into the hallway. So that way, unfortunately for my dear fiance who's working outside in the living room, I want to make sure that she can hear every word that I say. And regardless of whether or not she wants to hear those words, I want to make sure that my sound and the quality of my sound is strong enough to make that happen. And so for me, it helps literally to visualize where that's going to be. Even if it does, and I literally did this for the first couple of years, put up a picture of someone away from your space and make sure that in your head, that person can hear what you're saying well enough on their own. And that you're not yelling, you're not screaming, but you are definitely trying to speak to them across the room as opposed to just a few inches away from your face. And then if your microphone gets to like, if you tend to saturate the sound or something like that, change up how your mic works. Do not let your mic necessarily work for you on that, if that makes sense. Make sure that you are working you're working first of the best performance you can give, and then adjust your microphone accordingly after that. Don't try to necessarily just adjust things on your microphone first. All right. So yeah, that's just something that I was thinking about as we are going along with that too. Because again, you mentioned that you don't always like talking about microphone stuff, but I've spent a lot of years talking to microphones, and I watch other people talking to microphones, especially if you like go to a town hall or something like that, and someone picks up a microphone and they're like, "Yes, hello, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, so I'm here for today because I wanted to talk about chicken nuggets, and it kills me every time, especially if they talk into it like this, and they're getting these big plosives happening right in front of it. Give yourself space, project outward, not necessarily always towards the microphone, but just make sure you got that you're giving yourself the opportunity to have a good vocal performance, and then adjust the sound accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad
is there any
for that.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I'm glad you're here for that.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we started opening things up to questions?
Another thing, so thinking about posture, you want to have your chest kind of open.
Number one worst thing I'm at, by the way.
Yeah, well, you see, I'm doing the same thing.
To this day.
Big thing is don't tuck your chin, because you're going to even hear how that just stopped my voice.
Yeah, kind of. I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. So don't sit back in your chair. You got to sit up, because that tuck, you can hear what it just did to my voice.
Mostly. Could you do that one more time? Actually, sorry, we lost you for about 10 seconds there.
Oh. Yeah. So if you're tucked, you can hear how it stops my voice.
It does sound restricting. Yeah.
Yeah. So just be careful of that, and you'll see the little double chin. It's there. If you see that, stop doing that.
Yeah. And actually, to that point too, you mentioned a little bit about posture. A lot of us sit in very nice gaming desk chairs that we allow us to lean back and just be comfy the whole time. Our shoulders are leaned out, or me personally, I love to hunch my shoulders over and talk like this the entire time, where I'm like surrounding the microphone with my body for some reason. What is kind of the proper sort of form when you really want to be heard and you really want to make sure you project properly?
Well, you want your shoulders back a little bit. You want to have room for your stomach to go in and out. So, like choir directors I've had said, "Oh, don't cross your legs." Well, that's bullshit. Doesn't matter. You still have room. Biggest thing is don't lean back, because then you're tucking your chin. And then it's more for your body, that it doesn't, if I'm sitting here with my shoulders hunched, it doesn't change my voice, but it's not good for you, because these muscles here just start to shorten up, and because we're doing so much computer work, we're really rolling our shoulders forward, and that's just not very good for us. So it doesn't matter that much to your voice. It matters more to your body. A really good thing to do is to stretch out these muscles. Go up to a doorway and press against the doorway, and you feel this great stretch. Do it both sides, and it stretches these muscles. But it's really more just for your body, for your general welfare. Just don't hunch so much.
Yeah, no, or else like my old ancient age of 28, I already have a hunch forming right on my back, and I was like, that was middle school and high school me, just making my life miserable now. Be sure to have good posture, folks. It's important. Not only just for audio, but like also just you're on a camera, if you're on a webcam for your streams, have good posture. It's going to make you feel better.
Right. Another great stretch When you're talking for a really long time, you'll even find that, your mouth gets tired, or you might even feel some tension, like at the back
It's
of your
yeah,
jaw.
yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like the world's like worst first world problem of like, oh no, I talk too much and now my mouth hurts. But it
Yeah.
does happen. It really
But
does.
right. So I just told you about a stretch for these muscles, where there's also a stretch for your speaking, and that is to stick your tongue out as far as you can.
Mm-hmm. For how long?
No, just just like you do a stretch after running or whatever. But doesn't that feel good? Put it back in now.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. There we go. There we go. Yeah. No, it does, but it sounds weird, guys. But really, right now, try it out, and you'll realize it does feel pretty nice.
Yeah, it's a great stretch, just like you do after exercise. It really feels good. If you, I tell my corporate clients, you might want to go into the bathroom or something with, so nobody's seeing you do that. And then I put something up on LinkedIn about this, and I said I thought for just a second about doing a video, and thought, oh no. That
Welcome to my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
The entire time.
Yeah,
No, I
and
get you.
the internet is forever. So now, of course, I've done it here, and now it's forever.
Yep. There's no Skype ever again. But you know what? It's about 30 to 45 minutes into this. So they have to get pretty far to find that at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
To that end, actually, I'm seeing generally a lot of questions about kind of how to set yourself up for success, like prior to a performance and during a performance, when it comes to like just making sure you don't blow yourself out as you're doing these sort of things. So, in your experience, what sort of things did you typically do in order to kind of prepare yourself to be vocally ready for whether it be singing or a new voice gig that you're doing?
For singing, I do, scales and runs and things like that, so that are going to find the highest note that I'll be singing and the lowest note.
Mm-hmm.
For speaking, I think, well, do we want to go back to help them find a couple of those spots in your head?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
So doing some exercises to try to find those different kind of ranges.
Yeah. So
Sure.
that, because we've been talking about how you feel it. So
Yeah.
if you want to feel what I call the high excited, I call it the baby owl.
Okay.
Woo! Woo!
All right, folks.
Woo!
You know what to do. Time to look crazy in that coffee shop. Here we go. You ready?
Woo!
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 Woo! Woo!
You don't have to press.
Woo!
You don't have to hit it very hard. Just let it kind of float up there. Lots
Woo!
of air. Woo! Woo!
Woo!
Woo! Woo! And you should feel it right about your eyelashes. And then if you want to do the mommy voice, that's you're okay. You're okay. Kind of flip it up and over. You're okay.
But
You're
not achieving that high point, but
Yeah, you're
just a
not
little bit
going that
below.
high. You're
Okay.
going right to about here. You're okay.
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 There you go.
Yeah.
You're okay. You're okay. So then you're going to feel that right about here. And you want to do these really lightweight. Put more air into them than sound. One of the guys that I worked with said he found it easier to really feel the vibration if he would just hum. And he could feel that better. So you try that.
So if you want to be in less self-incriminating in a space about all these weird sounds that are happening, you can hum instead of just have your mouth open for that too.
Yeah.
Because again, folks, yeah, go for it.
So that the humming really does a good vibration.
Yeah.
When you hum though, kind of start so the inside of your mouth is still kind of open, and then you feel it a lot more.
It's just it allows you to, because again, you're focusing less on the actual sound at that moment, but more about the reverberation of it as it passes through your skull. Right.
Right. So people have asked me, oh, when you work with your clients, do you record them and then play it back? And I don't, because what you sound like inside your head sounds very different, if it's recorded.
Right.
So it sounds a certain way and it feels a certain way. So I'd rather create the muscle memory of, oh, I'm feeling this vibration. So you get more used to, oh, this is what it's doing.
Mhm.
Because it sounds too different from outside. So I want it to be more, this is how it feels, so that you're just really aware of it. And it's all you. It's not an outside thing. It's all inside your head.
Certainly. Yeah. And making sure that you feel how that is playing out in your head
Right.
is going to be really important for it.
Right. It helps the awareness.
All right. Yeah. No, and again, folks, like these exercises do help. They genuinely do. If you can kind of work on making sure that you know how to properly resonate your face as you're going along, it is going to help you hit those different points. And something we talked about too, with regards to this, you've got like the it's a sale voice kind of thing and the mommy voice and things like that. Why are those important? Should we like in our daily lives, we're obviously not shouting about sales every 30 seconds, right? Why are those important to us when it comes to just having conversations or when we're trying to put on an entertaining show, whether because a lot of this is improv, so it's not necessarily a script that they're reading, right? But these aren't necessarily just like sounds for a particular commercial. This is emotions we're talking about, right?
It's vocal variety.
Yeah.
And that's the spice of life. So if I were to talk to you, even if it's a very pretty voice, but if I was to talk to you in this tone of voice for a half an hour, just geez, leave me
You fall
alone.
asleep after a while, right?
So
It's too calming.
yeah, yeah. So it's just about variety, and that's what helps keep your audience interested and perks them up and things like that. So yeah, you just have to change things up once in a while just for the fun of it.
Yeah, and Nort
The other
yeah, go
thing,
for it.
yeah. The other thing I found is that if you're using that information range at about 4 to 4.5 minutes, your audience's brain will stop for a second. What's happening is that when you're in this information range, your listener is saying, collect, 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 collect. I have to collect. He's telling me something important that I have to remember. So that's a lot of work. So at about 4 to 4.5 minutes, it's like, I need a break. And you just need a nanosecond break. But if you were looking at your audience, you would see that their eyes are wandering, or they're looking at their watch or something like that. And it's not that they're not listening or they're not interested in you, they just need a break. So what helps is to have the vocal variety. So at 4 to 4.5 minutes, you change it up. And then it allows the brain of your listener to just rest for a second and then, come back in.
And that's something actually I do plenty during my streams is that I have kind of built up this sort of patter, I guess would be a word for it, where I will, if I'm discussing something and I'm trying to explain what's happening in the game, or if I'm trying to explain what's happening in my daily life as I'm talking and just kind of, randomly talking about stuff, I will throw in, just some exclamation where I go like, oh, so, I was walking down the street and then I stubbed my toe and it hurt. And then I'll go back down here. That wakes people up. It will get people back engaged again because they're like they'll even just hear that big kind of hit, and they'll suddenly be like, oh, what was going on? Let me listen back in again. It doesn't have to be an explosion by any means, but just having that vocal dynamism in your daily kind of conversation tones can help a lot, right?
Right.
Or if you as Loco's mentioning in chat, like if you have the ruler and slap it down on the desk and be like, pay attention, and then get back to it. That a different way to do it, not necessarily like how you would want to go about not antagonizing your viewers, but it's a way to do it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just hopefully less tone.
Another client was doing things at he was going to Toastmasters to help just his sales and things like that. And he would keep getting nicked for no vocal variety.
Sure.
Well, and that's because his voice was stuffed down in his throat. And it was so interesting. The first time that I talked to him, it was about 5:30, and he'd been on the phone all day doing sales. And he was doing that. Kind of like someone else I know.
Yeah, it's so weird how that keeps coming back to that, almost as if it's a common problem that people suffer from. And I had one of those issues too.
Right. So the next time I talked to him, and he had driven somewhere, a fairly long car drive, and so he told me that he was practicing all of his vocal exercises in the car by himself. So the next time I worked with him was at about 5. And as I'm listening to him and we're just chatting, I said, Joe, do you realize that you don't have any phlegm down in your throat today? And he was like, oh yeah, I guess I don't. So, interesting how that works.
That was actually one of the questions that came up, was that someone they mentioned they people who suffer allergies and things like that, where they have a bit of nasal drip, that can always be a bit of a problem. But a lot of that, and it's something that I encountered a lot too, is I would be constantly habitually clearing my throat because I felt like that was all kind of just congesting in there. When in the reality was I was just beating up my throat so much that my body was trying to naturally defend it by throwing enough mucus in there to keep it from just drying out and dying, right? And so to answer that question, to that point, like really make sure that you're getting that voice outside of necessarily just inside your throat the whole time. It really does help.
And if you have a bit of a sore throat, or if you have some of the allergy problems, you can't necessarily do this. But if you're just at home and you're talking, just put lots of air in it, much more air than sound, and pitch it farther up in your head. And it will make things feel so much nicer. And particularly during allergy season. And this is a bad time. All the ragweed is the pollen. So these last couple of weeks have been really tough for people with allergies.
Totally.
And you can totally lose your voice. And just to give yourself a rest, just to make you feel better, just talk. Sound like Marilyn Monroe. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Much, much more air than sound. You'll still be heard, not as well, but it's just going to feel a whole lot better. A whole lot better.
Sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are actually they're very curious about this kind of airier voice as you play that out. I think it's really important to remember also that all the tips that we're giving and all the exercises doesn't mean that you can suddenly start speaking for 24 hours a day. The human voice is not designed to do things like that. And if you try to make it do that, you will lose it. It'll note up. You'll be hoarse a lot of times, and you might just have severe loss of like quality of sound as you get older. So vocal rest, in addition to making sure that you practice these things and you maintain well and you hydrate or dihydrate, to make sure that you are keeping yourself safe on that too. Do you, in your experience, Pam, what's kind of a good, let's say you belt your heart out there and you feel ragged by the end of it. What's a good, as was mentioning in chat by Kanmai, what's a good refractory period, or like a good vocal rest time before it's time to jump back in?
It kind of depends on how big a thing and how healthy your voice is in the first place.
Sure.
So, if your voice is positioned where it's supposed to be positioned, so if I sing, a big, huge aria
Mhm.
that's, you know, 10 minutes, it takes me a few minutes to rest. Um, but because my voice is positioned well, I don't really need it doesn't get ragged very often. So, but good genes. I've got that in my favor too. Some, a long line of singers, powerful voices.
Some of us
Um,
luckier than others, certainly.
yeah. Um, I I don't know. I think it's so dependent on each person.
Sure.
Um,
Could we say then that until your voice, it doesn't hurt to speak anymore? Like, I
yeah,
think sometimes you know you better than anybody else, right? And
right,
in those situations, it is best to listen to your body and understand when you need to be able to take that time off and when you're ready, when it feels like you're ready to bounce back from it.
right. But my big thing is your throat should never hurt. There's
Right.
no reason. There's no reason for it to hurt unless you're doing something wrong. And I can teach you how not to do that. If your voice hurts after doing if your throat hurts after doing a couple of hours of streaming, then you're doing something wrong,
Right.
and you need to change.
Mhm.
Because then, if you're doing that over and over and over, resting each day for going to do it. It's not going to help because
Right.
you're just going to keep abusing your voice.
Even if you give yourself that time off, like you're still going right back to that pain.
Yep.
And it's not gonna help a lot for that.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. Well, with that, I think if unless there's anything else you wanted to chat about, I think we could start picking up some questions here. We got a
Yeah.
handful from the audience. And again, folks, this is we talked a lot about here in the first the top 3 quarters of this. But there's plenty of opportunity to still ask questions and things like that. This is a live open workshop, so we want to make sure that we get your information in there as well. We have a few questions here that are kind of playing along. With that, just because I think it's an important thing to kind of shelve off from that. A few people asked about making sure that hydration is going along and things like that. Personally, from my background, I need to be just drinking water all the time in order to get through the day that I go through. And literally today, I started filming at about 10 this morning, and I have not stopped talking since. Just because I've been recording stuff because I'm going to be taking a vacation for a bit, so I'm putting stuff on my live chat or my on my live stream during those times. I'm recording for this YouTube channel, and then I immediately went to this. After this, I'm going to go right into my stream for about 3 hours after that. If I wasn't drinking like this sized amount of water and this sized amount of tea that I constantly refill during the day, I would not be able to make sure that my body is hydrated. Now, that isn't to say, whenever you're drinking something, you're not like pouring that on your vocal cords, right? I think sometimes that gets lost on people. Those are directly interacting with your vocal cords, like you aren't putting like water on a fire here, right? Instead, this is the sort of thing that you need to be doing in advance. It can't just be during, it has to be before and during as well, because that water, that hydration is going to make sure that your vocal folds are in prime shape to be actually vibrating for as long as you need them to vibrate for. And if you come out, just try to start cold, start dry, it's not going to feel very good after a while. And hot drinks, warm drinks and things like that with a little bit of honey, it'll feel great and it'll soothe, but it's still much more important to hydrate beforehand than necessarily during or just keep hydrating, but especially after as well. I think people lose track of that.
Mhm. Well, the main thing is that you're not pouring things over your vocal folds, because if you
Right.
were doing that, you would drown.
It's called drowning. Yeah. No, pretty sure that's drowning.
Yeah. So, your esophagus is up next to your trachea. So I think the warmth of tea just feels nice.
Yeah.
But again, it's still all the hydration in the world is not going to help you if your voice isn't positioned properly. It's not going to do it. It's not going to do a darn thing. You're still
Right.
going to have the phlegm and all that type of thing. One little thing is try not to drink milk because it'll make you a little phlegmy.
Things, dairy especially. Yeah, I've noticed especially. There was a time where I tried to drink glasses of milk during streams, and I'd be like, and then it just felt like this big buildup of phlegm in the throat. And it's like, why did I do this to myself? I made this harder for myself. I don't know why.
Right. Hydration is just good anyway, but it's not soothing your vocal folds. It's not going, you're not pouring things down your trachea because then it would go into the lungs.
Mhm.
So hydration is just good generally.
And yes, coffee's okay too, by the way, but you do also need to drink other fluids as well, namely water. Water is very good. All the good.
Yeah.
So let's see. We got a few other, or plenty of questions here, actually. One thing, and we talked about this a little bit, but just to kind of hammer it home, Dynamation asks, do these kind of vocal performance things that we've been talking about, do they become second nature, or do you pretty much just always need to focus on it? Does it have to be in like the center of your mind as you're trying to do everything else, or does that eventually become just so secondhand or so commonplace to you that you don't have to think about it too much anymore?
It becomes commonplace, but I'll tell folks that one client was very concerned. She said, I'm practicing and practicing, and it's just not coming naturally. And I said, I still, even though I know what I know, and I've taught this and all of these types of things, I'm always tweaking and changing. So it's just in the back of the mind, oh, I can shift up or whatever. It's kind of like if you notice, oh, I need to sit up straight. You as I'm sitting up straight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's those little back of the mind tweaks that you do, or if you find once you learn about body language, if you find yourself during the winter doing this because you're cold, you'll realize, oh, I just need to. I'm looking closed off.
Sure.
I'm still able to have this conversation. I'm still able to finish a sentence, even though in the back of my mind I'm saying, open up your arms. So it's the same thing. You can always kind of in the back of your mind, oh, I should tweak or maybe, do something a little different. It's not keeping you from thinking about other things.
Yeah, another thing too, if it helps, Post-it notes. You're in a space where you are in like you have screens in front of you, but those screens aren't perfectly like just full screen and nothing else. They've got those nice bezels on them, and you could stick a little Post-it note on there that hands you some nice friendly reminders in case you forget things like sit up straight or make sure that you're breathing from your abdomen as opposed to from your chest. And things of that nature, like that. It's silly. It sounds silly, and I'm sure if someone looked at your desk, be like, "Why do you have suggestions on how to breathe?" But it really does help in terms of just kind of making sure that those things are at least somewhat in your mind, if not like in the center of your mind, and then eventually those things start to kind of flow back to the back of your head that you just start to do naturally over time, and that can be really helpful as well.
Right, but I think if you're using your voice to give out a message, be aware of, all right, do I want to sound more trustworthy? If I want to sound more trustworthy, I need to move it up in here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If I want people to be excited, I'm going to move it up here. And once you know, oh, these are things that happen from the voice, then use it. You have that many more tools in your toolbox. But you have to be conscious if you're doing something. If I'm working on a voiceover, I have to read it several times and think about, how do I want to hit this word? How do I want to do that? And I will shift and change. Or if I'm putting an audition in, I will do it several different ways. So yeah, it takes some work. So if your voice is your main instrument and bringing your audience in, make it work. Do some stuff with it. And yeah, it takes some work.
Yeah, it does. And it's gonna feel uncomfortable and weird at first, and that's okay. It's totally normal for it to not feel normal.
Yep.
Just keep focusing on it and keep working forward to try to make it, to just try to improve your sound. And again, make it hurt less. I hear so many people, how do you keep it going? It's just the if you use the proper technique at first, it's going to help you in the long run and keeping that all safe. Let's see here. Another voice or another question here from Cunning Dolphin, aimed a little bit towards yours truly. So something that I typically do on my streams is I love to do various different voices, right? I like to have I like to voice all the characters in a game, and that doesn't always necessarily mean that my vocal profile fits everybody well, but I at least try. Since you've learned to speak differently, how has that affected the voices that I do? Do you revert to the way you used to speak to match the voices, or have you adapted the voices the way you speak now? So I started doing voice stuff back in about 2014. I met Pam here back in about 2017, and that helped improve the sort of voices that I could do greatly, because I had much stronger vocal control of like my range and where the emotion I was going for the character in particular too. As Pam has mentioned a few times now, understanding what tone and where that kind of reverberation plays out for the viewer can help you understand what the emotion of that character is going to convey. If the person's up here the entire time and they're just either really nervous about everything or they're really excited about everything, they know, like the audience knows that there's an energy there. And they don't know if it might be a positive energy. It could be an anxious energy, but it is an energy that is very much conveyed by having your voice kind of, vibrating or reverberating up at that space. Meanwhile, if you're talking down here, you imagine, some big burly, person who you understand without even necessarily meeting them, probably has some gumph to them, right? They probably have a little bit of extra kind of push, even if it's coming from a little pipsqueak. You've been taken off balance because you feel like there's some power there. And so understanding how the different ranges within your voice and how that can change how you're communicating can really change how voices kind of go. I don't know how much experience you've had with character voices, Pam, but do you have anything to add there?
The one thing I found, and some of the questions that you and I talked about before as we were working through this.
Oh yeah.
The having done some theater in college, somebody told me that if you're thinking of a character, to attach that character to a part of your body, because someone said, how do you stay in that character? Number one, I think you just have to practice. It's not easy.
Oh, for sure.
But what helped me was, if you pick a body part for that character, it kind of helps you stay in that character. So I did one that was just, ditzy blonde. So I kind of centered it right here, in the blonde. And then I could really talk up here for quite a while, because it's just, all about, oh, my eyes are so wide open and I don't have a thought in my head. And it just was easier. And then doing the woman from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, I thought of her as, she's sitting down here and her hips have spread a lot because she just, she's let herself go. Well, that just brought my voice down, to where that was. So that's just a little trick that I've learned. Give that a shot. And it kind of
be very physically present in kind of what sort of voice you're trying to convey.
Yeah, so that it helps you connect to something else besides just being right up in here. It just helped me stay in that character and get a better grip on that character. So it was a fun thing to learn.
Yeah, I think for me too, just remembering like a key phrase or a key word on how that character is supposed to sound can help me inform very frequently where I want to go with it. Like I'm currently playing a series right now called Professor Layton, where there's this kind of gentlemanly, not Sherlock Holmes due to copyright detective puzzle solver man who tries to go out and solve mysteries that are happening. And for some reason, the only thing that I always remember is he talks to his young protege, Luke, like this the entire time. And so whenever I need to remember how Herschel Layton sounds, I just always remember him saying, Luke. And I just can match there. As long as I remember that vocal imprint well enough, I can pretty much just build the voice off of that. The more words that you can remember, the better, because one word isn't really strong enough to build an entire voice, but it's enough to at least get started on those sort of things too.
Mhm.
Another question we have coming in, and I think we talked about this actually in prep too. Chef Hazmat asks, is there a way to learn to love your own voice? For example, I cringe when I hear my own. So we talked a lot about kind of the authentic voice and what that means and what that doesn't have to necessarily mean. Do you want to expand upon that?
I think the main thing is that you can change your voice if you want to
Mhm.
within about an hour. Once you learn what the instrument is, how it works, you can change it. And it's not that hard. It takes some practice. If you don't like your voice, if you don't like the sound of your voice, then change it. It's not it's not that hard.
And I think that's something we run into is I think one of the biggest like first bits of advice a streamer gets on Twitch is be authentically you, be yourself. And I understand from the perspective of if someone who's never performed before tries to perform, kind of like a vaudeville, like it doesn't translate well because you have no training in that, and it's not a good way to kind of play that. But especially when it comes to your voice, and it's something I had to learn from Pam as well, that it doesn't have to what your sound is right now doesn't have to be what it is. And that's not a betrayal of you. It's just and for one, if you're talking about streaming, your viewers do not know what the real you sounds like until you start speaking. That's okay if you use a voice for your recordings or your live streams and things like that. But like it doesn't what your current sound is doesn't have to be what it is like for the rest of your life. Your voice right now isn't what you need to stick with. And if you're concerned that you'll feel less authentic as a result, keep in mind that you as a live streamer are putting on a performance. It's not just you sitting in a couch in a living room playing video games. That worked maybe on Twitch 6 years ago, but it's no longer like there are too many people doing that. You have to sound better than that. And just really being focused and being cognizant of what sort of sound you're making can really help improve that immensely. So that's not to say that like, oh, I hate my voice and it's just because I'm not trying hard enough. No, it just means that you haven't had a chance to try yet
Right.
to try and improve that.
Well, and I tell a story of, so I have a degree in music. I've been playing the
Mhm.
piano since I was 7 years old. I've been singing in choir since I was 5 years old. And you can tell that I'm not 30.
Sure.
So, but if you handed me a clarinet, I could make a noise through that clarinet.
Probably.
Yeah. I'm a musician. I don't know
not-
how I don't know how to play the clarinet.
It's not going to sound great. It's going to be mostly squeaks.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
If someone taught me how to play the clarinet, then I could make music.
Right.
So to expect to use the instrument of your voice, so you're just doing it.
Mhm.
Then, but if you want to make music with it, if you want to do something special with it, have people attracted to it, via Twitch, then learn how to play it. The other thing that happens, though, too, is that we all imitate what we hear. So
Sure.
so if you're in the South, you tend to have a drawl. You imitate what you're hearing. What has happened is that people my age grew up listening to, watching TV, scripted TV with trained actors. They had voice training.
Mhm.
What has happened is, number one, the writers' strike that happened.
Okay.
All of a sudden, along came reality TV.
Sure.
And you no longer have trained actors that you're listening to. So
Just
now you've got
Johnny Cool
anything.
off the street.
Yeah. Yeah. And then YouTube started, and everybody's a YouTube star. Everybody's doing this. So you're listening to a lot of untrained people.
Mhm.
And we tend to hear a lot of New York, California people, just because there are more of them. And so this habit of talking down in the throat has become very common. And so we are imitating it, particularly people of a certain age.
Hi, like mine. I'm one of those age.
Yeah. Yeah. So and so that has happened. So we are imitating what we are hearing. Whereas someone my age was watching Mary Tyler Moore, who was, this trained actress who has her head up in her, or her voice up in her head. So now you're listening to a bunch of YouTubers that are talking like this.
And that maybe a sound necessarily you're looking for, but and you hear that and you try to emulate it as you're mentioning. But if you're wondering why your voice hurts afterwards, whenever you're listening to that YouTuber or that Twitch star or something like that, you don't hear how they sound after the stream. You don't hear you don't experience the pain that they experience after the stream or something like that, because you don't have that aspect of that perspective. Whereas like having a trained voice can allow you to make sure that you can do those, or can make those sounds or emulate those sounds that you're trying to do without necessarily hurting yourself in the process.
Right. Plus, you can send your that is your skull.
Mhm.
And that's helpful just in regular conversation. So right now, we are not, no, I don't want to be spreading germs.
Right. Yeah,
So,
don't project in a crowded room right now, guys.
right,
That's
right.
an important thing to remember, certainly.
Yeah, my whole business model of doing group workshops is pretty much shut down.
Yeah.
Um,
Virtual.
yeah. So, but what I would tell people is the other thing that I think is happening, particularly in the US, is that we have this certain our personal space, and that personal space is arm's length. So what I've
At
found,
minimum.
or I hear
6 feet's
people,
better right now.
they're even, yeah, it's too close. They're even letting their voices drop down before it reaches someone else's personal space.
Sure.
What I hear from people my age is that when they are talking to younger people, they can't hear them. Number one, one too many rock concerts, my hearing is not fabulous anymore.
Let's say, hearing goes down, but yeah, I understand
Right.
where you're going with it too.
Right. But this habit of talking down in the throat, you can't get your voice out. So us oldsters are still in those hiring positions. We're still, for someday we will get out of your way, but you want to be heard.
Right.
So the only way to be heard is if your voice is up in your head and you talk to about a foot behind someone. So you make sure that your voice is going past their ears well. The other thing is that the look of if you were looking at an oscilloscope that shows the sine wave of a sound, a voice is a real pretty up and down sine wave.
Sure.
A trumpet is a sawtooth wave. Goes
Mhm.
up and then it has this jaggedy thing. So know that as you're speaking to someone, that pretty sine wave is nice. It feels good. Now, before we were wearing masks, even your breath, this even flow of breath, carrying that pretty sine wave, it's okay if it goes into someone else's personal space.
Sure.
It's nice. It feels good. Now, if someone said, Pam, people say I sound angry. I said, that's because you
did.
do.
You got
And
scared.
that's a stop start. So you're actually physically stopping the air. You're stopping that pretty sine wave, and people can physically feel it. So
You
it's
need to let that
beyond-
flow play out.
Yes. Yeah.
Keep the breath support on well beyond where you're talking. Don't
Right.
let it end right there. And then stop the sound. Because otherwise it sounds like, you're under attack. And that's not good.
Right. So then and thinking as you're allowing the sound to travel past the end of a sentence, the air. So there's the end of a sentence compared to end of a sentence. Again, I just pushed my tongue back and it shoved that sound down into my throat.
And you hissed out at the end as opposed to letting the whole thing flow.
Yeah. So you want to keep your voice up and moving, that tube of sound is continuing to go.
Yeah. Cool. I've got I think one more question that we haven't hit upon yet. And I have no idea if we can answer this one, but we're going to try. Dynamation asks, so I sometimes get this thing pretty rarely where the top of my tongue goes numb from talking. Is there anything you can do about that?
I say try that stretch.
Okay.
I haven't experienced that. I think what can happen is you're holding it a certain way so that you're actually getting like a cramp.
Sure.
One thing that's really good is to get in that information range. You want to use the inside of your mouth, the sound. You don't want your voice to go back to the soft palate because that stuffs it back into your throat.
Right.
But as you're talking, open your mouth. And you want your tongue to be kind of nice and flat. So it gives that nice cavern in there, gives all that room, and that helps things go forward. And so your tongue should be loose, relaxed, touching the back of your bottom teeth.
And if you press too much on the top there, that's probably where that's going numb for sure.
Yeah, could be. I'd want to see and hear what that person sounds like because you can usually tell. And I had one client that said she had a retainer down behind her bottom teeth. So she was very careful about not touching it with her tongue. She had taught herself not to touch it with her tongue.
I have the same thing, actually. I have a permanent retainer on the bottom row of my teeth here. And it took a while to really understand how to interact with that. I had a top one too, but I had it removed because I knew I was going to do more kind of vocal work. And I didn't want to have to dance around it all the time because it was giving me honestly a bit of a lisp that I could not eliminate because I had practiced how to talk like that.
Right. But what was happening with her voice, because she was always pulling her tongue back, her voice was really stuffed into her throat, but it also became very nasal. And that was because of her tongue position.
Sure.
So one thing that with those permanent retainers, it's okay to touch them.
Yeah, it is. I promise it's not that scary. They're not that sharp.
Right.
At first.
Right. You're not gonna hurt it.
Yeah. Actually, with that, you mentioned being able to hear people's voices. Again, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to ask them. I had one last question on there, but it was mostly about, again, kind of making sure that you do the right maintenance and just making sure that if you practice in advance, or if you do the things that you need to be doing, you shouldn't have to necessarily do as much work in maintaining that voice and also hydrating. To that end, some people might be in chat right now, be like, hey, these are nice bits of advice and tidbits, and we really understand and appreciate all the stuff you're putting in here, but I don't necessarily know how to apply this to my own voice. You offer one-on-one lessons, right? Like just the same way I found you. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. So for all of you, normally I charge $500, but for you listening today, it's $200.
And what does that entail, by the way? Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
you give $200.
right. So we've already done some of the preliminary. I would probably do it one-on-one with you as well. So that's an hour.
And I've done that a few times, guys. I failed it once or twice, but you know.
Say that again?
I failed it once or twice and had to redo the step one a few times, but I got there eventually, I promise.
Yeah. So then I would want you to practice a little bit, then come back to me in a couple weeks. We'd have another hour. And then I'd probably want you to come back again for another follow-up for another hour. And everything's going on via Zoom right now.
So it's all virtual, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I can hear you well enough and I can see you well enough to do what I need to do. So, and I've been doing it, I've been working on Zoom for several years now. So it wasn't a big change with COVID.
And as streamers, we have our own stuff that works pretty well for also, in addition to putting on a live show, also a pretty bang up Zoom setup, to say the least. So
yeah. So then what I do is most people come to me like for two follow-ups, but I've had people come back and say, I'm doing a video. Can you help me with it? 6 months later, I'm happy to do it. So I'm basically with you as long as you need me.
Sure.
So yeah.
And
so
again,
me and then we can go through what you
and that's pjohnson8@wi.rr.com, right?
The other thing you can do is go to my website, pamjohnsonvoicecoach.com, and there's a contact me button.
Lost her for just
and
a
you
second
can
here.
set up a half-hour free introductory call.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you even just a half hour, just kind of talk about like, I think I remember doing this with you, like setting up what sort of things you could offer to that person based on what they're hearing and what their desires are.
Right.
Cool. Yeah. And one thing I want to mention this, as we're coming up to this final bit, this is not a sudden declaration that if you want to stream, you must pay money for voice lessons. There is no other way. No, this helped me a lot as somebody who spoke way too much for the kind of voice that I was using at the time. And people, I get compliments all the time about, your voice sounds great. You have this incredible voice. Or on the other side of it, there's no way that's your real voice. Why don't you turn off the vocal changers? And then I'll be like, okay, hold on. Beep, boop, boop.
And then I talk like this for about 3 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, you got me. This is my actual voice. I hope you've enjoyed this stream so far.
No, it really does. It really does make a difference when it comes to getting that sort of vocal sound yourself. And it is kind of that next step. If you're looking, let's say you did all that sort of technical work and you've got everything else set up and you're trying to find something else to how to improve your stream, I really recommend working on trying to improve yourself as a performer, and getting voice lessons from Pam or from somebody else is going to help you a lot along that path. If that's not on the table right now for you, that's totally fine. You've gotten this entire workshop here to practice and understand those exercises and try to keep working those things out. But if you want to have someone on hand to help you with those things, a voice coach helps out quite a bit for that.
Main thing is, I don't want people to hurt.
Yeah.
And that was one of my concerns with Shado. He was doing, you're too rough at the end at 5 o'clock. This is not good. You're too young to sound this rough at the end of the day.
I was teaching like middle schoolers and things like that, where I had to be, I felt like I had to scream over them in order for them to hear me. And that's not necessary. You don't have to shout. You don't have to strain yourself in order to be heard well at a strong volume and at a reasonable pace too, for that matter.
Right. I don't want people hurting.
Yeah. And if you hurt right now when you're streaming, go back and rewatch this workshop again and figure it out. And if you still are hurting after that, send her an email and make sure you kind of get that all discovered there.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no other questions, again, if anybody has any questions for Pam or myself, now's your chance. Otherwise, thank you so much, Pam, for working with us today. I personally learned a lot again because I always forget the lessons and then I hear them again and then like, okay, yeah, I'll remember to do those. And then like exercising, I do it once a month. But I really do appreciate it. Is there any last words of wisdom you want to toss out there in the world before we let everybody go?
Yeah, I really appreciate being invited because this is something. The reason I did this, the reason I started this business is that I want young people to be heard. You
Sure.
deserve to be heard. And us baby boomers, okay, boomer, are going to get out of your way, hopefully sooner.
Eventually.
Yeah. But you have to be ready. You have to be healthy. You need to be heard. What you're saying is important. So I want you to do it safely. I want to develop some new habits so that you're really being heard. You have something good to say. I want people to hear you.
All right. Well, with that, I think we'll let things go here, folks. Once again, thank you so much, Pam. Folks, again, if you want to look more into picking up a voice coach, Pam is. I've been working with her for 3 years now, and she's a fantastic voice artist as well as voice coach. Be sure to check her out by going to PamJohnsonVoiceCoach.com. If you're interested in setting up an appointment, again, 30 minutes for free. You could just talk about what she could do to help you for free. Be sure to send her an email that way. And there's a good deal. You remember that StreamerSquare sent you specifically, and let her know in those. Otherwise, she's going to charge you full price. So make sure you get that in there. But thank you once again.
Yeah,
go for it.
That's $200. One shot.
Yep.
Not 200 every time.
And
Flat fee. That's it.
Yeah, and that covers any and all lessons that you go on from there. So that's not like per lesson or anything like that. As someone who did a lot of like shopping around, guys, that's a really good deal. Just saying. Anyway, that is, I think, our last show for today here on StreamerSquare. I want to thank you guys so much again for coming out for these weekly workshops. We love putting them on for you. We love coming up with different ideas for you. If you have ideas on what you want to see for future workshops, be sure to hit us up on social media and things like that. We're always checking to see what sort of ideas you want to hear from us. We love bringing in people who have expertise where we don't necessarily have it, and I'd love to do that more if I can. So if you want to hear about a particular subject on how to improve yourself, either as a broadcaster, whether it be the technical side, the performance side, or things of that nature, we'd love to keep doing those things for you, because we want to make things that help you become a better you for what you're doing. With that, I think that's where we'll leave it off again. Thanks again, Pam. Thank you for watching, folks, and we'll see you for the next show here on StreamerSquare. Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, folks.